Federation Peak, southwest Tasmania. According to Edmund Hillary, it's Australia's only real mountain. Just west of its fang-like summit, running parallel to the improbably thin Blade Ridge, is a skiable line, at least in theory. It's wildly spectacular, technical, and unlike anything else in Australia. But its low elevation and Tasmania's notoriously fickle snow means it probably only ever comes into condition for a few days. And then there's also a slight issue with the access.
Right.
Sean and I had been talking about skiing Federation Peak for several years. It started as a bit of a joke, but the idea stuck and gradually solidified as we realised it might actually be possible. Then it became almost a burden, a thing that would forever linger in our minds unless we tried it. With the backing of the North Face Adventure Grant, we both took the winter off work and waited for the right weather system. After a couple of worryingly dry months, it came. A cold, sustained southerly flow that brought snow to sea level and supplied Tasmania's lowest ever recorded temperature. We headed in the day before it was due to start. In our packs were ski boots, crampons, ice axes, a rope, climbing gear, a 4-kilo mountaineering tent, 3 kilos of camera gear, and food for 10 days. Our skis were suspended horizontally, a necessary technique for some of Tasmania's more botanically intensive approaches.
Unfortunately, Ben's ice axe fell out of his pack. Somewhere back there, maybe up to an hour back. Just run back to get it now. And I'm just waiting on the edge of this nice stream. Farmhouse Creek.
We reached the Buttongrass Plains, which had been burnt in the fires of 2019. The lack of vegetation was relief, but the track disappeared in places, and the mud holes were as deep as ever.
There's the mashed potato right there. We got some veggies in there as well.
Yeah.
We got some kind of meat in a Ziploc bag. Classic. What did I learn today? I learnt why people don't try and ski Federation Peak. Can you tell us about where we're camped right now?
Mystery campsite, 1 to 2 hours, probably more like 2 from Hunting Camp, which was our intended destination. But I think we're pretty happy with this.
We'd been dreading the second day. To reach our base camp at Betcher Base Plateau, we needed to climb the infamous Moss Ridge. It's only 2.5 kilometres long, but it's 2.5 kilometres of the slowest, hardest walking it's possible to do while still technically being on a track. It begins with an unrelenting tangle of slimy roots and branches, and gets steeper as several high points are gained and descended. The climbing is never technical, but big packs and dangling skis don't make it easy. Often, it requires blind faith in the integrity of finger-width roots and barely attached mud steps. A fall here would have deeply unpleasant consequences.
Here we are on the Moss Ridge. Ben is climbing some overhanging section with his pack on. What the fuck? He's a madman. Fucking cold. Why are we doing this again?
It was your idea.
just want to go to sleep, hey? I would quite happily crawl into that cave there and go to sleep right now.
Yeah. As we approached Betcha Base Plateau, a tiny haven of flat ground under the summit tower, the snow started dumping. We were both getting dangerously cold. Sean was exhausted and beginning to have doubts about continuing. The only alternative camp, a marginal rock overhang 3 hours back down a ridge, wasn't really an option. So we pushed on, aiming for the camp where we'd spend the next 3 days waiting out the storm.
Morning of day 3. Finally at Betcha Base Plateau. 30 centimetres of snow and the weather looks pretty amazing, but it's not going to last. Another big dump coming in tonight.
Alright, Ben, you're brushing your teeth inside of the tent.
Yeah,
Why is that?
because it's not ideal toothbrushing conditions outside the tent at the moment.
How would you describe the outside world at this point in time?
A little worrying. Good in terms of snow, bad in terms of getting down Moss Ridge.
Very true.
We had some pretty gnarly gusts of wind about half an hour ago, but it seems to have died down a little bit, but it's still dumping and has no sign of slowing down.
I would say the snow is about halfway up the walls of the tent at the moment. Let's take a look outside. Look at that out there. Maybe 50 centimetres now, I reckon. So tomorrow we're going to go for the Couloir. It looks like there's some good weather approaching for the first time in a few days. And we had a bit of a recognition today, walking up to the start of the Southern Traverse, and it looked fucking great. Look at this. The sun is hitting the top of the mountain, and we're getting ready. Ben, how stoked are you?
86% stoked.
That's great. That matches about the approximate humidity at the moment. And the cloud cover.
I just shot up to 93.
Whoa, look at that. That's Federation Peak in the sun. Oh, lucky we cleared that path through the bush yesterday. That took about 10 minutes rather than an hour, wallowing through the deep snow.
Between us and the top of the Couloir was the Southern Traverse. Without snow, it's a delicate scramble, 600 disturbingly steep metres above Lake Jeeves. Very few people have experienced it in true winter conditions.
A bit lower.
Just climbed down this thing, felt so sketchy. And that's the way down, all the way to Lake Jeeves.
Here we have the abseil line just reaching the bottom of the steep bit of G's Gully. And Chockstone Gully, our next obstacle. Oh, the fuck is it caught on? Rope!
The snow was mostly firm and good to climb, but the amount of ice on the cliffs above was making us anxious. Here on the shaded side of the mountain, it wasn't much of a concern, but we knew the sun would soon be warming the north-facing rock above our ski line, sending anything not firmly attached down into the couloir's inescapable funnel and directly onto our heads.
We're here.
Yeah.
Look at it. Wow. Yeah.
Hopefully get a bit better further down.
Yeah, I reckon it will.
Yeah.
The easy bit of skiing looks shit. Really? Yeah.
Right, we're just watching lots and lots of ice fall down the Couloir, and from on this little safe ledge, Ben had a bit of an abseil down to have a look how the rest of it was, and it was just huge chunks of ice. And in the firing line for all this falling ice, I think we're gonna call it here. And yeah, what do you think of it, Ben? Are you happy with what you've achieved?
I'm pretty happy with what we've done. It was always going to be a long shot actually skiing this thing, and we've got this far, which frankly surprised me. I thought we'd get shut down much earlier. Did Farmhouse Creek, Moss Ridge, sat out the storm, got the perfect day, did some amazing alpine climbing to get here, like legitimate alpine climbing. Then we got 5 turns on pretty nice snow, and decided it wasn't for us. I'm happy.
We retreated back across the southern traverse. Despite bailing on an objective that had taken years of planning and several days of suffering, we were satisfied, fully immersed in where we were and what we were doing. The day's crux was still ahead of us. We'd abseiled down Jeeves Gully on the way in, and climbing it was the only way back to our tent. It's an easy climb in summer, usually done ropeless, but the combination of rock, ice, unconsolidated snow, and a belay that was more ornamental than functional kept things exciting.
Whew. Yeah, so much easier when the snow was firm. Yeah. Woo. Woo.
We donned skis for the final slope above Betcher Base Plateau. The snow was in horrendous condition, and the skiing was objectively terrible. But the sun was shining, the views were good, and camp was just below us.
We're just drying our stuff, and tomorrow we're going to go back home. What do you reckon of today's adventures, Ben?
Reasonable effort. Yeah. We gave it a red hot go, as my former principal would say.
Can't argue with that.
Do a little dance.
The whole point of the trip was to scratch an itch, to get the idea out of our heads and never go back. The itch felt well and truly scratched. We got the ideal weather, did what was required to get out there, and made all the right decisions. But as we were walking out, Sean mentioned something about a return trip. I immediately dismissed it, but it got me thinking again about different timing, different conditions, and a different approach. It felt a bit like the itch was returning.